freaking excited. Did you guys see anything about the Spiderman Noir, Nick Cage coming to Prime TV show? Yes! And you guys like Spider-Man? Forget Johnny Storm. I'm freaking drawing Spiderman Noir. Let's get into it. I'm so freaking stoked. Let's go! Hey everyone, welcome back to Frank Brock Art. It looks like a lot of you really enjoy Spider-Man, man. So today I'm doing something a little different. This is my take on Spider-Man Noir, but instead of going like a deep dive into the character's background, I think I'm going to walk through a little bit of the process, how I approach the piece and how I'm transitioning from Sketchbook to Adobe Illustrator. Come with me on this nice little ride through my creativity. Now, first off, Spiderman Noir, he's a gritty trench coat wearing version of Spidey, set in like the mid 1930s. I didn't want to just do like a copy of what I've seen on movies or whatever. It kind of looks similar, but I wanted to do like my own little style, my own vibe. So for this design, I think I was thinking more of like a pulp comic-y kind of meets urban shadows, something moody and cinematic. Now, I started this piece in Autodesk Sketchbook. Now, for me, this is where all my characters are born. I like to do like a block in the shapes, fast and loose. Sometimes I lean more into like long lines and with the emphasis on the trench coat, and then I keep the silhouette strong because I want them to be instantly recognizable even in low light. So I always work in layers, even during the sketch phase. I separate body, posture, the clothing details, and also accessories like the goggles and the web shooters, stuff like that. These things I try to keep clean when I move over, into Illustrator. Now here, I'm always, a little self-conscious about like my line work. It could be a lot better than it is, but I'm still practicing, still fine-tuning my craft even at this later stage in my life. But, I think it's just a lot of practice. You just got to keep practicing. Your line work will eventually get stronger. I tend to erase a lot because it's like, man, it doesn't look right. So, but because I'm kind of used to just working with paper and being able to turn that paper all kind of, long ways, sideways, or whatever. But when you have a digital table, you got to rely on like your tools to be able to turn, your paper, so you can kind of get that right stroke. So, being that I'm just, I guess I get a little lazy and I don't want to turn my canvas, I keep it straight and I try to do my best to kind of get the best line work when I am working digitally, on my monitor. So, so please excuse all the erasing, hey, I gotta do what I gotta do, man, and get that line work looking look good. So, but eventually over time I'll start just rotating my canvas more. It's not like a hard thing or anything. It's just I don't think about it. I just kind of like want to get my line work done fairly quickly, and so that I can kind of move on to the next stage and the next stage I really like is the coloring stage, especially when I bring it into Illustrator. So yeah, at this process, I'm just filling in all my line work, filling in all the blacks and creating like the different shadows in the code, and creating some different techniques, shadowing techniques, to make the character pop a lot. And but at this point, everything seems to be, moving along fairly quickly, fairly easily, fairly nicely. And I just like that process, So, I want to add like some small little highlights towards the back of the leg. And then also in the coat, I want to leave room so when I do, start with the coloring process, I can easily kind of add little highlights, on the top of the hat or on the edges of the jacket. So, but for the most part, I think it all turned out really nice. So yeah. Now, once I'm happy with the sketch, I export it as like a PNG and then bring it into Adobe Illustrator. Now, this is where things get sharp, literally. Now, I transitioned from like the pencil style sketch to, or rather, it's more of like a brush kind of ink kind of style into like the vector art, which is big, which is sort of a big leap, but it's worth it, because I get the clean lines, I can kind of correct some things, using the points and, and it's easily, to be scalable, when it's like vector art. Now, I use like the pen tool, for the majority of the time when it comes to, creating different strokes or lines or pieces of color or any kind of shape or whatever, to redraw, if need be, to redraw the figure if I have to. Now, it's a slow process, but, it gives me like a lot of, control over the curves and the corners and, overall look of the character. I'll use strokes and variable weights, and then, like sometimes I'll take that stroke and then make it into a, I'll expand it to where it becomes like an outline or whatever. So when I scale it up, it doesn't, it'll still maintain like this, shape or whatever. Because like if you just take a regular stroke, pen, point to point, if you scale it higher, the weight of that line stroke will change. I could put like 1, but I'll scale it up, and then the thickness will differ, depending on the scale. So sometimes you got to like expand it out, or turn it into points or whatever, or make it into some sort of outline, so that you can scale it and it still remains the same look and feel of how it was. So I do that, and I tend to I go over the whole piece and start coloring the different groups, the different elements, like the trench coat, gloves, the mask, etc., tweaking little things as I go. So yeah, this version of Spiderman Noir was a fun challenge, not just for the design, but also for the workflow. Moving from Sketchbook to Illustrator gives me more art, it gives my art like more of a polish, I'll say, and also some flexibility, on what I want to change, and the line strokes and the cleanliness of it. Now I hope seeing the full process give you some ideas for your own characters. So yeah, if you enjoyed this, drop me a like, comment what hero you would like to see next. I'm still working on Fantastic Four, characters, so that'll be coming. So make sure you like and subscribe to Frank Brock Art. And thanks for watching, man. And remember, keep drawing whatever that makes you excited, man. Until next time, peace out.